Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy November 17th, Friday, November 17th, Justice League Day. And before we get started, let me just check something. Let me make sure I am not echoing here in this. I can turn this live stream off. I think I'm good to go. But again, happy Friday, everyone. Uh, Justice League is finally here, guys. It's this movie we've been waiting on forever. Thank you guys for joining me today for this review. This is the channel All Things Superman, where we simply talk about everything related to Superman, from comics to TV shows and movies and much, much more. And today in this video, I'm going to give you my review of Justice League. Now, I've seen the movie twice already. I watched it back to back on last night, and I'm going to give my thoughts about it. Now, just up front, there's going to be spoilers in this video. But before I get to the spoilers, I do want to give just kind of an overall perception of the movie. If you're thinking about going to see the movie and you haven't seen it yet, I'll just give you my thoughts about the movie, and then I'll let you know when we're about to get into spoiler territory. All right, so if you have yet to see Justice League, the movie is absolutely worth seeing. The entertainment value of it is off the charts. I mean, I was literally smiling in the movie almost the entire time. I was really kind of antsy because, again, this is a movie I've been waiting on literally my entire life. I grew up on Super Friends and, you know, reading Justice League comic books and things like that. So, but the entertainment value of this movie, again, is off the charts. There's a lot to love about this movie. I think that everybody that goes to see it, anybody that goes to see it, will have a good time with the movie. I know there'll be some comparisons to like Marvel movies, things like that, you know, just the usual stuff that's expected. But I think, again, the fan reaction and the overall just being in the theater with other people who are also enjoying the movie. Literally, when I watched the movie both times, people were clapping at the beginning and at the end of the movie. So it just spoke a lot to how much people enjoy the movie. The story is pretty. It's a pretty decent story. It's a pretty locked in story. There's not, despite a lot of the stuff that you may be hearing about the movie, a lot of the bad stuff. I honestly have to say that none of this stuff took me out of the movie. A lot of it wasn't even noticeable. Now, see, the good part about what I did, if you've been following my channel, is I went dark. What I call going dark, which means for about the last week and a half, I basically turned off all media, all social media, YouTube, and all of that kind of stuff, because I didn't want to get all of these opinions and, you know, perceptions about the movie in my mind. And I knew they were going to be screening it to critics and stuff like that, you know, pretty early before the general movie audience got to see it. So I didn't want to get all of that in my mind, and I wanted to go into this movie with a clean sort of, or as clean of a slate as I could have gone into it. And I think that was a benefit for this movie to me, because I wasn't really aware, although I did hear some stuff, I wasn't that aware about what people were really saying about the nuances and stuff of the movie. So again, just full disclosure, if you are thinking about, or if you're on the fence whether or not you want to go see Justice League, it's well worth seeing, go see it. All right, now, that said, we are going to jump into spoiler territory. Again, if you have not seen the movie, you don't want any spoilers, click off this video now, come back and watch it after you've seen the movie. Or if you haven't seen the movie and you just want to know some spoiler things, that's fine too. Stay tuned and we'll get into it. Now, what I did last night, I saw the movie back to back. I literally walked out of one theater. It was about a 30-40 minute gap between my movie, both the movies. I watched it in the Dolby AMC cinema the first time, and then in the IMAX the second time. And the experiences of those were not that much different. So it doesn't really matter if you go see it in IMAX or Dolby. I do recommend you seeing it in either one of those formats, though, versus just like the standard regular movie format. So after that, after I got home, after I saw the movie a couple of times, I immediately went online and started seeing what people were saying about the movie, because I had been away from it all week. And so with some of the spoilers we're going to talk about, I want to address some of the things that people have been saying too. Okay, so first thing, let's get into, let me look at my notes here. I'll start with the villain. Let's start with Steppenwolf, since he seems to be like one of the bigger topics of conversation. Was Steppenwolf a bad villain? I personally don't think so. I think Steppenwolf was a very formidable villain. Now, there's some other things about him that I'll say in a minute, but I think he was a very formidable villain. He wasn't like this, you know, oh my God, just like I have this fear in me that he's going to defeat the Justice League or something like that. He wasn't that kind, but he still had this gravitas about him that said, you know, this is a guy that we really, really need to take serious, that the Justice League needs to take serious, and that this team needs to come together because this is a very serious threat. I did get that from Steppenwolf. Now, so some of the parts that, and this is getting into the next part of the topic, which is the CGI. A lot of people have been talking about the CGI, the computer graphics in the movie. Now, I will say there were some issues with the CGI, namely with Steppenwolf. If you've heard some of the things that people saying about his mouth movement, that is true. Like, you can really, really tell. But I will say this. The first time I watched the movie, the first viewing of the movie, I didn't even notice this stuff at all. It wasn't until the second viewing of the movie, on up into the movie, where I started to say, oh, that looks really weird what his mouth is doing. It looks like some sort of animatronics where it's not really syncing with exactly what he's saying and his facial expressions and stuff like that. Really, it kind of looked a little weird, but again, even at that point, it didn't take me out of the movie. I was just said, oh, okay, maybe that's what Steppenwolf sounds like on Apocalypse or something like that on his planet. So again, this CGI thing didn't take me out of the movie with Steppenwolf. But again, I think he was a very formidable villain. I don't think he was a bad villain at all. We didn't get a lot of, I think what a lot of people are saying, which I can understand. I think a lot of people are saying that we didn't get a lot of history or backstory on Steppenwolf. Now, that is something that I will agree with because he just kind of shows up. You don't really get a lot of, you know, who this villain is, who he's related to, how he's related to Darkseid or anything like that. He just kind of shows up. So with that argument, I can't understand why some people are saying, or maybe perceive that he wasn't just this really well-developed villain. But again, like I said, once he does show up, I think he reaps a lot of havoc. You can see a lot of the action and a lot of the destruction, you know, right there. As soon as he shows up, I mean, it starts to happen. So to me, again, he was just a formidable villain. I immediately started to see like, oh God, like this is something like really the Justice League is going to have to take into consideration. But again, the CGI, so there was the CGI with Steppenwolf. Now, there were some other CGI issues in the movie that I will say. Some of the stuff, and like I said, I really want to be careful about this because I don't even really want to call them issues. I just think it was things that the arguments that are made about it. Again, this is stuff that I didn't really take note of my first viewing of the movie and 80% way through the second viewing. But some of the graphics and some of the computer graphic effects and stuff like that were kind of noticeable. I think generally what movie studios want to go for is the more realistic kind of thing, to where the CGI doesn't take you out of the movie and it doesn't seem like it's just this separate thing where you can really tell the juxtaposition of real life characters and something that's CGI. I think there was a slightly bigger gap between these two things than what's normal in the movie, but it wasn't that big of a gap. So let's just say this distance right here is a normal gap. Maybe in Justice League it was probably about like this. So again, you're not talking about a huge difference here, but people who are sensitive to stuff like, you know, looking for computer graphics and CGI effects and stuff like that, it probably would be a little bit noticeable, more noticeable to them than it would be to the common or average person. That said, the CGI has come a long way, so I think we all have certain levels of expectations when it comes to the quality of the CGI in the movie. Now, you know, to give them the benefit of the doubt, Justice League has gone through quite a bit through the change of directors and all of that kind of stuff, which brings me to my next point of the whole Zack Snyder versus Joss Whedon thing. So the question inevitably comes up: can you tell whether or not this is a Zack Snyder movie or a Joss Whedon movie? And my honest answer, guys, is absolutely not. there are some people that are saying that there's a point in the movie, like a halfway point or something in the movie, where you can just distinctly tell where this is Snyder and this is Whedon kind of thing. That's absolutely, I looked for it. This is the one thing I actually looked for in the movie, to kind of see the styles. Now, here's the problem with this. The problem is that Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder, they don't just have like one style. They may have like a main style, the way that they do things. But who knows what Joss Whedon came in once he took over from, in post from Zack Snyder. Who knows what the approach was that he took? Nobody knows. We're all just thinking that, hey, he took this Avengers approach, that he, just brightened things up and he made it like this, and he took this approach with Justice League, and that may or may not be true. Joss Whedon on this movie could have just said, okay, let me try something different than what I've been doing with these Marvel movies, with Avengers and stuff like that. Let me try something different. So maybe he came in and tried to put a different spin on even what he does. So that's the problem with trying to compare, Snyder to Whedon. And the same thing with Snyder. Maybe he approached this movie, with a lot of the backlash that happened from Batman versus Superman. Maybe he approached the movie and said, okay, let me try something different. So maybe even his style changed, when he or his approach changed to making this movie and directing this movie. So again, to me, there was no clear point to where this was Whedon and this is Snyder on either side. Like, you can't tell at the beginning of the movie, you can't tell toward the end. One of the things that you can tell, of course, that there is a difference between the sort of stylistic approach to Batman versus Superman versus that of Justice League. Justice League does tend to lean toward a bit more of a brighter, if you will, and I hate using that word because I don't even really like calling Justice League dark, but I know that's the way people refer to it. But it's a brighter, that's for the lack of a better word, it's kind of a brighter movie. There's a lot more humor in it. There's a lot more interaction with the characters. There's a lot more things to kind of glom onto that compared to things like a Marvel movie. So I can understand to some extent why people do, or some people are saying that this is a Joss Whedon kind of, feel in the movie. So, but again, to me, guys, I didn't see it. I didn't see this big difference between, like, this is Snyder and this is Whedon. That just didn't happen for me. Okay, so now getting into some of the deeper things here, what I want to talk about is, let's see on my notes. Okay, so let's talk about Superman. This is Superman channel, right? So let's jump right into Superman. Oh my God, guys. Okay, so first off, before I get excited, let me talk about the way they bring Superman back, because this is probably going to be somewhat of a topic of big discussion and some controversy. Now, the way they bring Superman back to life in this movie is completely different than the way they do it in the comics. The whole, black suit thing, we don't get any of that, none of that in the movie. The way that they bring Superman back to life is that they use a mother box. So they figure that, Bruce Wayne figures that, this mother box brings life, or it helped bring Cyborg to life, as we've seen in the trailers, that Cyborg's dad uses the mother box to kind of bring him back to life. So Bruce Wayne, Batman, gets this idea that, hey, maybe we can do this with Superman. So they go, basically, long story short, they dig up Superman's grave. They put him in the same water. You remember in Batman versus Superman where Lex Luthor is putting Zod in that water in the Kryptonian ship, and he creates this, the monster, the Doomsday monster. The exact same thing happens in Justice League, where Aquaman brings, they're all at the Kryptonian ship, and then Aquaman walks Clark Kent's body down in this water and pushes him down in the water. Flash has to run to charge this mother box with a electrical charge as it hits the water, and then they hit it and Superman comes back to life, and he's back to life. That's pretty much how it happens. So again, a completely different thing than we've seen in the comics, and the story of the return of Superman, or rebirth of Superman. But now I think that threw a lot of people off. But let me tell you what happens immediately after that. I'm telling you, it really makes you forget that this is how Superman is brought back to life. When I tell you Superman kicked ass, this was the Superman, like the badassery Superman that we should have been getting in a lot of the previous versions of the Superman. Now, Superman basically comes back to life. He, when he's shocked back to life, he flies up in the air, and then he lands over there where the Superman statue was in Batman versus Superman, and it's broken up. The other Justice League member shows up, everybody except for Batman. Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman are down there. They're looking at him, oh my God, he's back. So he turns around. Superman doesn't realize who he is yet, doesn't know who he is. I guess he sees them as a threat. What happens is Cyborg is not able to control his functions of his body yet. So I guess when something kicks in and he sees as, or the machinery sees as a threat, his defenses goes up. So his thing automatically goes up where he can't control it, and he shoots this laser beam at Superman, which he dodges. And then you can see when he dodges this blast that there is like this rage in his face. It is like, man, he shoots like his laser eyes out and just, and it's like crazy. Like I was like, oh my God, like oh shit, like he's supposed to kick their ass. So what commences after that is like the best battle. Like Superman basically takes on the other members of the Justice League, and they are no match for him whatsoever. Oh my God, like he gets into the scene with this fight with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, he's close up with Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman headbutts him, or I think he headbutts her first, and then she headbutts him back. He goes back a little bit, and then he flies up and like this big ass headbutt, boom, like, and he knocks her down to the ground, and you like, oh my God, it was like crazy. So then you have these other parts where they come up, and basically Superman he's standing here. He's holding them all at bay. He comes up, he's holding Aquaman, he's holding Wonder Woman, and he's holding Cyborg. Flash runs around him, like with his super speed. You can see Flash run around him, and then they do the slow motion shot where Superman does his eyes to the side like this, like to the side, and he sees Flash running. He drops the other two and then swings at Flash, misses him, but it makes Flash stumble over the steps. My God, that right there. And then if that's not enough, so at that point, Batman shows up, says, calls him Clark. And then this is like the most intense scene in the movie to me. I almost literally stood up in my seat. So he looks at Batman. Superman looks at Batman. He says, oh, I remember you. And then he goes over to Batman, grabs him by his face, picks him up in the air. And this is like the best line for me ever in this movie. First of all, he says, you did this. Then he said, you won't let me live. You won't let me die. And then he does this. They do this kickback from Batman versus Superman, which was the coolest thing ever. He says, now tell me, do you bleed? I was like, oh, like he's about to kill him. So anyway, I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting excited. That was the nerd moment for me right there. Like, he basically got revenge on Batman for that moment in Batman versus Superman. He's like, tell me, do you bleed? I was like, yes. So at that point, Lois Lane shows up. That was one of the contingency plans that Bruce Wayne had. So Lois Lane shows up, and then he kind of comes and kind of like I compare that to like what what's her name does in the Marvel movies with Incredible Hulk, Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow. Like, the sun is going down kind of thing. Although Lois doesn't do that, she just shows up and he sees her, and then he starts to calm down and remembers, and then they fly off to the house in Smallville. So anyway, I'm sorry guys, I geeked out on that moment, but that was the best part of that movie to me. That part, and the other part that I'll get to in a minute is the after credit scenes. But again, like guys, I'm telling you, this movie is great. So let's get into the next part. We talked about the way he was brought back to life, Superman battle. The other part about Superman was his fight with Steppenwolf. Now, when he actually does show up to help the Justice League fight Steppenwolf, basically Justice League, the other members are fighting Steppenwolf. They're pretty much they're kind of even in the battle, but Steppenwolf is getting the best of them. So then Superman shows up to help, and at that point, I'm telling you, like when I tell you the badassery of Superman came back in this movie, it was literally that. He shows up and he's literally smiling while Steppenwolf is swinging at him. He's like, shh, and he dodges the punch, and he's like smiling. And he punches him, boom, and Steppenwolf flies back into this brick thing, and it's like crazy. You see all of Superman's powers. I thought that was really good. Now here's the other thing: they actually introduced Superman's super breath in this movie. Yes, we get a chance to see his super breath where he blows and he basically freezes Steppenwolf's axe that he uses. I thought that was kind of cool. What I really would have liked, though, from that, or what I was expecting, is a kind of like a more of a Man of Steel kind of thing, where they gave us some background of his powers, where you see little Clark in school, in Man of Steel, and he's seeing through things with his X-ray vision. He's getting nervous and stuff like that. Same thing with kind of like his laser eyes, where you could tell in Man of Steel where he was doing his laser eyes, where he would stop and he would kind of do this thing, like you could tell he was getting used to his powers. I kind of would have liked a little bit of like, you know, hey, I just discovered I have super breath kind of moment from Superman, but it wasn't that big of a deal. He just uses it, he blows, and the fact of it was kind of, again, it's different than what we've seen. This is the first time we've seen his super breath in any of these movies since Superman Returns. He didn't use it in Man of Steel, didn't use it in Batman vs. Superman. So this is our first time seeing it. The effect of it, I think, was okay. It just kind of caught me off guard. I was like, wow, super breath. So I was like, oh, okay. So the effect of it was kind of cool. It just wasn't this big moment or anything that I hoped it would be. So, but I do think that was something that was very important to the story. The other thing about Superman, a lot of people was talking about, was the whole mustache issue. So if you don't know what's going on with that, basically, when Henry Cavill had to come back and do the reshoots, some of the reshoots for Justice League after Whedon took over the movie, he was already filming another movie, which I think was Mission Impossible, where he had to grow this mustache. So the makers of that movie basically didn't want him to cut off his mustache to go do these reshoots. So the makers of Justice League, Whedon and all of these kind of stuff, they had to do something digitally to cut out his mustache. Now, a lot of people are saying that you could tell. I honestly, let me tell you the honest truth. I honestly could not tell. Now, so the first time I wasn't looking for it because I had kind of forgotten about it. When I came out and when I got ready to go back into the second view, and I was like, oh, I forgot about the mustache. Let me look to see if I could see it. And then I kind of got into the movie a lot, even on the second time, so I forgot to look for it again. But that just says to me that if I was kind of, in a way, kind of looking for it the second time and I didn't notice it, that it's really not that noticeable. I think his mustache is one of those things that really you have to be looking for it to bother you. If you go into the movie looking for the difference between his lips when he has a mustache and when he didn't have a mustache, and it's, you know, digitally removed and all of that kind of stuff, if you go in looking for it, you probably will find it, and you're probably going to have a problem with it because you're looking for it. And you're going to be like, oh, that looks weird because I'm looking for it. Doesn't that just make sense? Now, like I say, so I will say this. I honestly think the general movie-going audience who does not know about the whole mustache issue is not going to even blink twice about it. I can almost guarantee you that. I have a couple of friends that have seen the movie, and I'm going to ask them about it, see if they seen. I'm just going to randomly ask if they saw anything weird about the way Henry Cavill was talking or his mouth or anything. And I can almost guarantee you nobody's going to see it because it's pretty much gone. But so you would have to look for it. So that's the thing about his mustache. Now, let's get into these cool after credit scenes, guys. These are like literally two of the best after credit scenes that I think that have been done in any movie, even any of the Marvel movies. Like these after credit scenes rival it. Okay, so the first one is like the nerdgasm of all, like every single after credit scene, everything that you've ever wondered about these two characters in your mind. So the scene opens and you got Flash and you got Superman standing there together. And immediately when they open the scene, like it takes about like a second and a half for them to say anything to each other. In that short second and a half, you automatically know they're about to race. Like, this is about to be a race. They're both in costume, they're both in their suits. This is about to be a race. Now, if you've been any kind of fan of the Justice League movies, animated movies, the comic book, the Super Friends movies, or anything like that, you know one of the largest sort of things in the movie is who is faster out of Superman and out of Flash. Even if you've never been a fan of these things before, you're just kind of a fan of the characters, this is something you've probably wondered at one point of time or another, probably in the back of your mind, but most likely in the front of it. So they race. They set this up where it's going to be a race, and they, basically, they talk about it, and it's like, if you win, I'll do this. If you win, I'll do that. They fly off, and of course, they don't show who wins the race, but it's just the fact that they do that. Like, that was the coolest thing ever. So the Flash lights this firecracker thing where he throws it up, and when it goes off, when it blows up, they shoot off, and then it shows them shooting off, and then it does the slow motion thing, and then it goes back into the credits. Coolest after credit scene ever. That was my favorite one. Now, moving on to the next one, whose gravitas is just as good as the first one, or maybe not as good, but kind of rivals it. Lex Luthor. So Deathstroke shows up. You see Deathstroke coming in on this boat. So it starts with somebody in the prison. They go to, I think, Arkham Asylum, and Lex Luthor or who we think is Lex Luthor, is turning around. You see the bald head in the back. The guard is telling him that, hey, Luthor, come on out, or whatever he's telling him. And then he turns around. The guy turns around, and of course he's not Luthor. Then he starts laughing. So from there, the shot cuts. We know that Lex Luthor has gotten out of jail some kind of way, and this is typical Lex Luthor stuff, which is cool. A kind of a kickback to the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor, where he basically always breaks out of jail. Like, the dude is always getting out of jail some kind of way. So Lex Luthor is out of jail. He's on this yacht out in the ocean or whatever. Deathstroke is coming up on this boat. You automatically see the two swords, and everybody's like, oh my God, Deathstroke, Deathstroke. So that was really cool. So he shows up, walks on the boat, and Lex Luthor's sitting there in his white suit, like all cool, calm, and collected. And you got this like business kind of guy out of Lex Luthor. It looks like Jesse Eisenberg maybe trying to do something a little different with his character than what he's done in the previous movies. So anyway, you get that after credit scene, and he's talked to each other, and they talk to each other. Deathstroke takes off his mask. We see his Joe Magniello. I can never say his name right. I think that's how you say his name. And then he's like, well, I think it's time. I was just sitting here enjoying the return of the God and the team they started, or the league they started. Lex Luthor says, I think it's time for us to start our own league. Which is a kind of a nod to the Injustice League. And some people think it may be Legion of Doom. It could be that too. But kind of more of a nod to the Injustice League or Secret Society, or whichever name you want to go by for them. So two of the best cool after credit scenes ever in a movie. And everybody's like, oh my God. And then even the people who didn't really realize who Deathstroke was, and don't know that much of comic book lore, they were kind of like, oh my God, what is this? So they were asking questions, and I heard people explaining to them, oh my God, that's Deathstroke. This is such and such, such and such. So really cool thing. So anyway, guys, I don't want to nerd out too more on this review. I do want to say overall, I really thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Comparison, I know a lot of people are wondering about the comparison between this and Marvel movies, say like Avengers and, Captain America Civil War and Avengers 2. That comparison to me is a little bit of apples to oranges. Although I do see the similarities. They both are team-up movies, things like that. I think in a way that they're apples to oranges. Justice League is a different kind of movie. Still fun, still entertaining, but they were going for something different than what Marvel was going for in their movies, which makes this comparison between the two really, really, really difficult. I think Avengers, Civil War, Avengers 2, all of that kind of stuff were great movies on their own. They stand really, really, really good on their own. And I think Justice League is a really, really good movie that stands on its own, in its own niche, in its own path. So the comparison of it is a little bit different. Now, the comparison to Justice League to Batman versus Superman, that's a little different because you got the same director and stuff like that. And I still have to say that to me that the movies are so different. Batman versus Superman is like it's in a specific kind of genre niche that they were going for. And Justice League is in kind of another niche. It's kind of in a different kind of avenue, kind of path than Batman versus Superman was. So even that is really, really hard to make a comparison. I may be able to compare this later on once I think about it more, but as of now, I really can't say I enjoyed Justice League more than I enjoyed Batman versus Superman, or vice versa. I can't really say either of the two. I think they're both great. I enjoy both movies. I think they stand really, really good on their own. Other than that, guys, my overall score for the movie, if I'm going to give it a score out of 10, because of the pure enjoyment of the movie, the entertainment value, a lot of the problems that a lot of people are talking about, I honestly didn't notice. The whole mustache thing, the whole CGI thing didn't take me out of the movie. Although the second time, on my second viewing, I did kind of pay a little bit of attention to it, but it didn't take me out of the movie. I don't think Steppenwolf was a bad villain at all. I wasn't. I really didn't see a lot of bad stuff about this movie at all. And because of that, my overall score for this movie out of 10 is going to be a strong 9. It's going to be a very, very strong 9. And that actually made, when I see it again, because of course I'm going to go see it a few more times in the theater. When I see it again, that score actually might go up. I'm going to give it a strong 9 simply because of the entertainment value. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we all can expect, or what we all want out of a movie. We want to go sit, we want to be entertained, and not think about, oh my God, can I see Henry Cavill's mustache? Like something, small as that. Or, it's different if we were seeing these close-ups or something on his mouth the whole time, where it was just like, wow, like I can really notice that. It would kind of be like like a fly or something landing on your face in the movie. That would take you out of the movie, right? But these little small nuances, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, all we wanted to do is show up and see a really, really good, entertaining movie, have a really, really good time in this movie. And I'm telling you, Justice League is that, period. I was sitting in my recliner seat because the Dolby Theater has the recliner chairs. I was sitting back, I was laying back, I was kind of like, oh my God, Justice League is coming on. And it opens with a Superman scene, a kid doing a cell phone video of Superman. And you guys can see that in the movie. But I was like, the whole time I was literally entertained. There was no moments that were like, oh my God, like what's about to happen next? Like this is dragging. There were no the pacing of the movie, like it was moving. Like it went from one thing to another. It didn't spend a lot of time on this. It didn't spend a lot of time on that. It was moving. It spent just enough time on most of the things. Although I do think that, it could have, the reason I'm not giving it a perfect 10 is because of some of the things I think they could have spent more time on. Things like Cyborg. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the backstory of Cyborg. To me, Ray Fisher was the standout in this movie. I know a lot of people are saying Ezra Miller is. I think Ezra Miller was the comic relief in the movie. So that caused him to kind of be a little bit of a standout character. But in terms of overall acting, bringing heart and stuff to a character, I think Ray Fisher all day. And it doesn't help that my last name is Fisher, that I'm taking out for him. I'm calling my cousin. So Ray Fisher is my cousin. But anyway, Ray Fisher is the standout guy in this movie to me. He brings a lot of heart to Cyborg. You kind of feel his pain. You kind of feel where he's coming from. I think Ray Fisher is a really, really good actor. This is his first movie. He's a Broadway actor. So it was everybody was kind of wondering when he got cast how that was going to turn out. And I think it turned out great. As far as the other characters, Ben Affleck, of course, he does really well. Henry Cavill, amazing as Superman. Gal Gadot, she's the perfect Wonder Woman. I got to say that now. A lot of people, even when she got cast, had trepidations about her. But even in this movie, I think she's bringing heart. And I'm seeing her progress from Batman versus Superman to Wonder Woman to now to Justice League. You can see her progress. You can see that she's consistently getting better. And I'm not talking about like a little bit better. She's jumping by leaps and bounds. A lot of people, and to me, she didn't even really start out bad. In Batman versus Superman, of course, she didn't have a lot of screen time, so you really couldn't tell. But that just says to me again, if she was just that bad, she would have stood out as being bad, and she didn't. A lot of people were saying that Wonder Woman was the best part of Batman versus Superman. Wonder Woman, of course, you know, they got rave reviews. She brought a lot of heart to that character. And in Justice League, I'm telling you, she takes that to a whole new level. You look at her and you see her facial expressions while she's talking to Bruce, the moment that she has with Bruce Wayne, and she gets into it with him and pushes him, where he brings up Steve Trevor and all of that kind of stuff. Like you can see the rage and anger in her face. Like I'm telling you, we gotta watch for Gal Gadot. She may be, and I may be jumping the gun a little bit when I say this, if and when she leaves Wonder Woman and she starts to do maybe some dramatic acting or something like that, I think she's going to be one of the top contenders for one of the hottest actresses in Hollywood. I think she's headed in that direction. Whether she's there yet, I don't know, but I think she's headed there. Anyway, that's my spiel for Gal Gadot. Everybody else, again, Ezra Miller was great. Everybody was great. Jason Momoa was great as Aquaman. You got this really cool surfer, badass guy out of Aquaman, and he played that perfectly well. Like, literally, there was nobody else that could have done that as good as him. So, that's the Justice League, guys. I think it's a really, really solid movie. I do understand some of the problems that other people have about it. Thankfully, we're not getting a lot of, at least as of yet. We'll see after this weekend is up. But as of yet, I'm not seeing a lot of the sort of hatred and fanboyism, Marvel fanboyism, and all of that kind of stuff that we saw with previous movies like Batman vs. Superman and stuff like that. You don't really have this really, really big divide in that, like we did with Batman vs. Superman and some of the other movies, and Man of Steel too. So thankfully that's not the case, so I don't have to tell anybody to shut the hell up like I did with Batman vs. Superman. And I'm saying that yet, we still got to get through this weekend. We still got to see the box office numbers. Right now it's still tracking. I believe it's tracking a little lower than what they expected. So we'll see how that turns out. The whole Rotten Tomatoes thing. I think I'm going to do a whole separate video about this whole Rotten Tomatoes thing because I got a whole lot to say about this. I'll preface it with this. A lot of people, a lot of the movie pundits and stuff online, which I'm sure quite a few of them you guys watch. But quite a few of these movie pundits and stuff online, they take up for Rotten Tomatoes and the writers and stuff for Rotten Tomatoes, and they make it sound like they don't really have this bias and stuff against particular type of movies. And while I think in a lot of cases that may be true, I think it's very, very naive to kind of think that the structure of Rotten Tomatoes, which is basically an aggregate site that, brings aggregate scores from all of these movie critics and movie pundits, which is inherently the problem itself. You get individual. If I'm a writer for, or a contributor for Rotten Tomatoes, and I have a bias against DC movies, then my bias is going to show up in my review. And guess what else is going to do? I can influence the people around me depending on my position. If I'm a movie critic and I have a certain position. Say I'm just a movie pundit YouTube, and let's just say I have 100,000 YouTube subscribers and YouTube followers. To somebody that only has maybe 75,000 or 50,000 or even less than that, 10 or 15,000, somebody like them, they're going to be more, probably more, what's the word I'm looking for? Probably more apt to looking or to respecting my opinion about something simply because of the gravitas that I have online. So it doesn't become a matter of, whether or not the movie itself or a movie is objectively good or bad or subjectively good or bad from each individual. It has a lot to do with influence and social proof, things like that. So if I'm saying that it's bad and I have all of these people that I can get to say that it's bad, all of my YouTube channel people, and then you're a subscriber to me, even though you're a movie critic yourself, you have only 50,000 followers or something like that, you're going to tend to agree with me. And then you're going to find the bad things in that movie. So it doesn't have to be this. I think we've been looking at this Rotten Tomatoes thing from a totally wrong perspective of how it can contribute and how it hurts or how it even helps, certain movies. But I'll get into that in another video. Again, I just wanted to, give my overall reaction to this Justice League movie. Again, we went kind of long with this one, but I was really nerding out on this movie. It's a movie I've been waiting to see my entire life. I think what we got in a movie delivered for me for the most part. So I'm really content with it. I have some concerns about where maybe the DCEU is going from here, simply because the critic ratings and stuff and the reception from the fans, and then maybe the low box office number that it may get, that it may not reach, all of that kind of stuff. That may mean a lot, you know, in the future, to where we get the whole, you know, is Ben Affleck going to remain Batman? Is Matt Reeves going to get Jake Gyllenhaal? All of that kind of stuff will contribute, and we'll talk about that in later videos. But again, this is my review of Justice League, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have not subscribed to this channel, make sure you go do that. We're in it now, guys. We're in the DC universe. We've gotten our Justice League. We got a long ways to go. You know, we still got more movies to come. We got Aquaman coming next year in December. So we got literally a whole year before another DC movie. So we're going to be talking about some other things coming up with this DC universe. Thank you guys so much for subscribing or being a subscriber to the channel. But again, if you haven't, if you're watching this, make sure you subscribe. We're going to keep coming out with a lot more videos. You're going to want to keep abreast to those things. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. And jump down in the comment section. Let's talk about what you thought about the movie. Have you seen it yet? Are you looking forward to seeing it? If you haven't, just jump down in the comment section and we'll talk about it there. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Happy Friday, November 17th, what I'm calling Justice League Day 2017. You guys have an awesome day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.